Hi, everyone. My name is Julie Mincy, and I serve Sanford as the Director of Greek Life. Today, we have a special conversation that I'd like to have with a good friend and colleague, April Robinson. Hi, April.
Hi, everybody.
April, thank you for joining me today. I'm really excited to have this conversation and record it so that we can share it out with all of the women going through the 2020 Panhellenic Recruitment process. Normally, we are able to have you join us for Sorority 101, but due to COVID and pandemic restrictions, we've opted for this opportunity, and I think actually it's going to work out better to have a conversation. So hello, and would you start out by just introducing yourself and letting our women know who you are?
Yeah, sure. I'd be happy to. I'm April, and you can call me April whenever we cross paths on campus or we meet each other in the food court. I just want you to know that you can call me April. I have been at Sanford for about half of my life now. I've been working at Sanford for 20 years, and I'm currently in the role of Assistant Vice President for Student Development and Support. Well, what does that mean, you might ask? Basically, it means I show up to work every day looking for ways to help students thrive in the classroom and beyond. And that really is at the heart of who I am and why I do love my work and keep doing my work, is because I had such a great experience as a Sanford student back in the day that I want to help recreate that for today's students and tomorrow's students. So I oversee the counseling center on campus, as well as SGA and student leadership and involvement. I also coordinate a retention team that asks questions like, why do students stay? Why do they go? What can we do better or different to be the best version of ourselves as an institution? And then I also oversee Sanford Cares and the care team, which exists primarily to come alongside students who might be having some struggles or difficulties, whether that's academic, spiritual, social, emotional, and just help them figure out how to bridge the gap between where they are and where they really want to be. And most of the time, it just takes a little bit of assistance, a little nudge, a little support or encouragement, and students can pretty quickly find their way to meaningful relationships and community and involvement. But that's who I am. I'm April, and I really enjoy coming to work every day to meet students and work with students and make sure that they have what they need in order to be living their best Sanford life.
I can tell all of the women watching this that they're going to just love you. So I hope that they do run into you in the food court or on Ben Brown or whatnot. So thank you for sharing about your role. I think that'll give everyone watching a better understanding of how you really come alongside students. And you mentioned the spiritual aspect. I know that many students, not all, but many, have chosen Sanford and also maybe even joining a Greek organization for that spiritual component. But what does that really mean for this process? This is a recruitment process. They're meeting people. People are getting invited and uninvited. So from your lens of a spiritual component and your past work as a campus minister, could you talk to us about spirituality throughout the next week that these women might be experiencing?
Sure. For the first 18 years that I was at Sanford, I actually was on staff with the Office of Spiritual Life. I'm an ordained minister, and I really spent most of my days for those 18 years talking with students about faith and the role that it was playing in their relationships, their decisions, their life plans. And that's still very much a part of who I am and what I enjoy doing on a daily basis. And one of the things I've really appreciated probably for the last 5 or 6 years is the opportunity to have this particular conversation with potential new members going through the Greek process. because I remember myself being a freshman and going through recruitment, and for the last 20 years walking with students who have also actively been going through it. There's often this conversation that unfolds about the spiritual aspect of this decision. I mean, recruitment is another decision-making process, basically, for you as individuals, for the organizations that are talking with you and making decisions about membership. So absolutely, if you are a person of faith, then you're going to pray about this decision, and you're going to kind of probably wring your hands a little bit about it. And many students will say to me, I just want to do the right thing, and I want to do whatever God's will is for me. Well, this is where I'm going to get a little bit candid and just say, I believe that God cares about things we care about, and there's no care too small for us to bring to the Lord.
Right.
However, I always say, this is my punchline in this talk, I believe there are two Greek letters that God cares about, and that's Alpha and Omega.
Yes.
And all the others are, just Greek to him. I really don't think it matters much to God if you're Greek or non-Greek, if you're Chi or Tri-Delta. I just don't think it really is a spiritual issue. I don't think you're going to be outside of God's will because you choose one organization over another, or you find yourself deciding Greek life isn't for you after all, either by your own choice or the result of the system and the process. And so I think it's healthy for us to recognize that sometimes as a coping mechanism, we will over-spiritualize a decision. And sometimes we want to sort of absolve ourselves of the hard work of making a good decision by just begging God for a sign. And then just putting all our eggs in that basket of, well, this must be a sign. The sky was azure blue when I was walking back from the calf, so that must mean I'm supposed to take the 80 pi bid, So I think that's a natural human reflex of ours, and that we want to make God responsible for everything, in our lives, when in reality, I think the fact that you've decided to try Greek life, or at least go through recruitment process, is a great opportunity for you to exercise your faith. But just remember, this is just an opportunity for you to get involved, meet people. It's not the only opportunity. It's not the only way that your Saintford experience is going to be rich and fun and meaningful. There are lots of ways that students can get involved. And so I just want to encourage you, especially those of you who are women of faith and that you pray and discern. I just want to say, just be careful that you don't over-spiritualize this or try to pass off the hard work and responsibility of the decision to God. It's really not a matter of God's will. I'm not going to get into a sermon, but I am going to give you a little theological tidbit here. Really, if you do the work and you really look through Scripture, even the phrase God's will it only appears in Scripture a handful of times, maybe 5 or 6 at most. And most of the time, it's honestly talking about a sexual ethic that we're to live by. There's 1 or 2 times it's really more general, like really God's will for us isn't a mystery. God's will for us is that we become more like Christ, which means we become more loving, more forgiving, that we are agents of reconciliation and redemption in the world. That is God's will for us. Whatever channels we do that through, or communities we do that through, that is what we're supposed to do. So you can carry out God's will, whether you're in Greek life or outside of it, whether you're in this particular organization or that one. So just be encouraged that you don't have to be afraid. You don't have to be afraid that you're going to miss God's good gifts for you. This is not an Easter egg hunt. It is.
Right.
Yeah, it's not an Easter egg hunt. You're not going to miss out on it. So just try to relax. I would say emotionally and spiritually, and trust yourself, trust the process, and pray. Absolutely, meditate, reflect, but just try not to let those stakes get so high.
Yes. So you mentioned, relaxing and maybe just kind of letting go some of the anxious, worry, fear that might be coming through, their body as they're walking through this, even though it's a virtual setting. So what would be an approach that you would encourage these women? So as they're watching this Friday, Saturday, Sunday, before they're beginning the process, how would you encourage them to approach the process?
Well, that's a good place to start. And I'm glad that maybe y'all are watching this before the process even begins, because one of the things I would say is it's really important that you be clear about your perspective, even before you begin. But the whole time that you are participating, keep coming back to how you're looking at this whole process. And if you can say to yourself, this is an opportunity that I'm taking advantage of. This is a process that I'm going to just trust that will sort of lead me to a place that is good for me. Now, for me personally, several years ago, I came to a crossroads in my life, and I just sort of adopted this idea that has been really helpful for me when I find myself on the precipice of opportunities or processes over which I really don't have control of the outcome. So when I'm opening myself up to risk and I'm sort of laying some of my hopes and wishes out, and making them vulnerable, and then sort of taking that risk in hopes of, bringing those to life, that also means I'm opening myself up to disappointment. Or even failure, depending on, what the situation is. And I've just decided that one of the best things I can do for myself is to decide that whatever happens is happening for me and not to me. That is a decision that we can make. It's kind of like choosing the filter on your Instagram. You're choosing how someone is going to see that photo. If they're going to see black and white, if they're going to see just the natural photo, you're making those decisions, based on that filter. Well, this is now the filter that I have sort of adopted to see circumstances and events and disappointments through. These things are happening for me, not to me. And what that is it gives me a little traction and says, hey, wow, this is a bummer that I didn't get invited back in this context, that I didn't get invited back to this party, or that my friends are going here and I'm not. It gives me another option. Instead of just being defeated and discouraged, it gives me an option of saying, well, okay, well, I didn't expect that. Let me look around for how this can be good for me.
Right.
Don't let me just focus on what I'm losing. Let me try to see what I could gain if I'm open to it. And, Helen Keller, who is our Alabama quarter personality and a wonderful personality from our state history to learn more about. She was deaf and mute, for those of you who don't know about her. And she has a quote that I love that is right in line with this idea. And she said, we have been given far too much to dwell on what we have been denied. And the reality is this process is going to land some of you exactly where you've wanted to be, for ever since you started thinking about potentially being Greek at Stanford. For others of you, it might have some unexpected turns and you wind up somewhere that you find is a perfect fit. And you're like, I'm so glad that, the process or God or whatever didn't, depend on me to determine my, path. There are others of you who are going to have, high hopes for a particular outcome, and it's just not going to work out. I mean, it's a numbers, thing sometimes, and it's a matching game, and sometimes there's not a match. And when you find yourself in that place, to be able to say, hey, there are like 130 other student organizations on campus that I can get involved in.
Right.
There are offices all across campus that I can invest myself in. And there are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of students who aren't in Greek life, that want to have friends, that want to build community. And there are hundreds and hundreds of people in Greek life that like independent people and
Yes,
like being in a relationship with them.
that's right.
And there are some of you who are going to start this process, and you're going to get partially way through it, and you're going to be like, this really isn't for me.
Mm-hmm.
And you too are going to have all these additional opportunities. And so in many ways, I want you to think of it more, not as acceptance or rejection, but I want you to think about it as like writing your own adventure. And so you may get to a point in this story where the next chapter isn't what you expected, but you still have options, and you still have choices and decisions that you get to make. Though some things in this process are out of your control, there are always more opportunities, and there's more availability for you to explore who you are, to find your place to belong, to discover your own personal purpose, to get connected, to build community. So be encouraged. And that would be my best counsel when it comes to how do you approach the process. Be open and keep a healthy perspective that this is just one piece, one possibility in your Sanford story. It does not have to define you or to determine whether you're a success or a failure, whether you have community or you don't, whether you're involved or not. So I would just say, hold all those hopes that you have very loosely, and be open. And remember, whatever happens, choose to believe that it is happening for you and not to you. And I am confident that ultimately it will become clear why it is indeed the best outcome for you.
I just love listening to your words of advice. I mean, personally, I greatly appreciate you, but I hope that these women really just sit with open hands and take everything that you've shared to heart. And maybe it'll even spark some conversation within their Rho Gamma groups about how they can encourage one another to be open-minded and know that things will be good for them. Okay, as we wrap up, are there any final parting words, encouragement, or advice that you would like to share with these ladies?
Yes, I think there is one more thing that's come to my mind.
Okay.
I was Greek when I was at Sanford, which was an interesting experience because no one in my family had ever been Greek, and I had no idea what I was getting into. But it was a good experience for me. But one of the things I think I did well as a member of the Greek community is I didn't put all my eggs in that one basket.
Right.
I never wanted someone to define me first by Greek letters that I was associated with. And so I would say, as a word of encouragement to the Rogams, to the PNMs, to chapter members, do not ever allow your identity to be reduced to a single descriptor. So don't do everything through a single outlet, whether that's a Greek organization or SGA or your residence hall. Like, don't do your Bible study group, your intramurals, your service, everything through a single organization. Experience Sanford and see what all it has to offer. It has so much. I mean, it is a huge banquet table set with all kinds of delicious opportunities. Okay. So, the Cheesecake Factory has a menu that is like a novel. It's huge, right?
Long. It's huge.
So many things to try there. I think, how crazy would it be if every time you went to the Cheesecake Factory, you ordered the exact same thing and you never even looked at the menu? And in my assessment, if you choose to be a part of a Greek organization or some other organization and you only do that org, then that's what you're doing.
Yeah.
And I just want to encourage you to spread out a little bit, like whatever, wherever you decide to place your membership, remember that it's not a single, you're not just relegated to a single membership. You can be involved in a lot of organizations and you can be active in a lot of different communities. And I think that you will have a richer, deeper, more diverse experience at Sanford if you will do that. Right. So let Greek life be what it is. It's an opportunity to meet people, get involved, to serve, to grow, but it's not everything. So just stay open and, really try to receive what comes your way with grace and really trust that it'll be for you in the end.
That's great. I think before we part, we can't end without sharing some resources and maybe how to reach you. April, I know you are open to meeting students. It might be virtually this year or by appointment, same with a few offices that you oversee. Would you share some information that these women could
absolutely.
utilize?
Yeah, you can always reach me by email, which is alrobins@sanford.edu. That A and L stand for April Lynn. It's a good Southern name. I was named after my daddy. alrobins@sanford.edu. Or you can honestly call or text me. My number is 205-337-6912. Yeah, since I did the hand signals, I won't repeat it.
Okay.
But, let's have decent hours.
Right. That's right.
When you text me or call me, but I'd be happy to set up a Zoom call with any of you, talk with you. My office is in the University Center. It's not super easy to find, so it's probably better just to call or email me, and then we'll connect that way and figure out if we want to get together for a meal or a cup of coffee.
A cup of coffee with you sounds really great. So thank you for your time, your wisdom, your continuous support for these women and them growing into the best versions of themselves. So thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me, Julie.
Bye.
Good luck, everybody. God bless.